Hello and welcome to another edition of the Holy of Holies series on my YouTube channel, Safe Pasture. I'm Sherry Hammers and I'm so glad that you joined me today. We have been talking about the Altar of Incense and getting some foundational and historical, biblically information to kind of help us to figure out what this piece of furniture actually means for our walk with God. And if you haven't seen any of those, I would suggest you go back at least to the beginning of the Altar of Incense to get a little more background on that. But starting off today, we are going to look at Revelations 8:3. And it says, "And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne." So that looks like it is talking about the angel is standing at the golden altar, or the altar of incense. Now in Elliotts Commentary, it says that this altar was of gold and was situated in the holy place. Now here the priest was wont to burn incense while the people outside were praying. And if you remember, when Zechariah was it was his turn to go into the Holy of Holies and to burn the incense. And the people outside, it says that they were actually praying. That's when he got the angel visited him and told him he and Elizabeth would have a son. That's out of Luke 1, verses 8 through 11. And so the scene, Ellicott says, the scene described by St. Luke bears a close resemblance to this scripture that we're talking about, Revelations 8:3. And gives a key to the symbolism. So here's the key. The prayers of the people and the smoke of the incense are ascending together. Wow. So the prayers are going up just as the incense is going up. It's a sweet aroma, a sweet fragrance to God. So let's think about this. This altar is before the throne of God in heaven. Like I've been telling and reminding you, the tabernacle, when Moses was given the plans, God said, he was shown what was in heaven. And he said, I want you to make a replica. I want you to make a physical example of this, of what you've seen in heaven, and attend to every detail. So this altar is actually before the throne of God in heaven. So we see that in the tabernacle, it's situated right before the veil, which takes you into the Holy of Holies, which contains the Ark of the Covenant. And we'll be talking about that in future episodes. So when the saints in both body and soul will come into the presence of God, the altar of incense is before the Ark of the Covenant in the tabernacle. It's representative of that the saints are coming into the presence of God. The ark represents the presence of God. And it's also called the mercy seat, if you recall. So we're seeing a picture of heaven here. And like I said in previous episodes, the tabernacle is not just a dusty old relic from the Old Testament. It is relevant to your life and your relationship with God right here and right now. I wanted to also read to you from the pulpit commentary. And the reason I'm going to these commentaries is because some of these things have just been obscure and there's not a lot of people teaching about these things and how they're relevant to our lives today. So I have to go back to some of these people that dove deeper than most people that I've heard today. And I just want to know as much as I can so I have a deeper understanding. All right, so the pulpit commentary says, they are simply, he's got some Greek words here. Let me see what we're talking about. Okay, so he's saying the golden censer and the incense and the prayers. So he's got some words here that I'm not sure. He's talking about the prayers. Okay, they are simply, and then he gives some language I don't understand, but it says the action here described is a portion of their ministry, is the priests. In other words, the prayers are part of the ministry of the priests. And they go on to say, through whom the prayers are offered, we all know. So the high priest is, Zechariah was the high priest. So the high priest in heaven is our mediator and channel of grace. And he quotes another commentator, Wordsworth, is saying that the angel is not here represented as giving efficacy to the prayers of all the saints, but as taking part in them. In other words, the angel is not answering the prayers. He's just he's ministering. The Bible says that the angels they minister to the heirs of salvation. So he's just assisting. There is a communication of prayer between all saints. So the saints that are departed and the saints that are still on earth and the holy angels. So he's saying all of this comes together. I'd never really thought of it like that. And then he says, the order of events followed here, though not given in minute detail, resembles the ceremony of the Jewish worship. In the temple, the priest took burning coals from off the brazen altar and proceeded to the altar of incense, on which to burn incense. And that's out of Leviticus 16, 12, and 13. There appears to be a kind of progression in the insight which the seer affords us of the heavenly worship. In Revelation 4:1, a door is open and St. John sees into heaven. He is, as it were, without the sanctuary. In this place, he is permitted to advance in his vision within the sanctuary. So he's saying St. John, he sees a vision of heaven, a veil's pulled back, he can see into heaven. And at first, he's outside of the sanctuary. And then he's able to advance into the sanctuary and to observe the golden altar. All right, in Revelations 11:19 and Revelations 15:5, the most holy place is disclosed. So the most holy place is also called the Holy of Holies, and he can see it. And it says the Ark of the Covenant is seen. Can you imagine? Can you imagine seeing all that? That would just be mind-blowing. And then he says a couple of there's some Alford and Dusterdeck. There's some other commentaries. They believe only one altar is here mentioned and identify it with that of Revelation 6:9, which we talked about in the last episode, which is where the commentators in that, we were talking about how they disputed whether it was the Ark of the Covenant, whether it was the altar of incense or the brazen altar, the altar of burnt offering. So anyway, they were disputing on whether it's that one or the other one. But anyway, so most of these people support the view given above and say that it is the altar of incense, which is the one we're zeroing in on today. And he says, one of the commentators says, the altar is Christ, to whom the angel brings incense. That is the prayers of the saints, having a golden censer. And this was curious because this had actually occurred to me before I looked this up. But it says here, in the latter place, it is rightly rendered frankincense, but the meaning here evidently requires censer. So they're talking about the censer, but remember when we talked about the table of showbread, it had cups of frankincense. And we talked about how the priests would eat the bread after it had been there for 1 week. On the Sabbath, they would change it out, and the priests would eat the old bread. But God had his part too of the offering, and that was the frankincense. And I haven't found anything definitively saying that the frankincense was taken from the table of showbread over to the golden altar. But I wouldn't be surprised if I did, because that would be God's part. Like when you're done with the lampstand, doing business there, and taking in the word at the table of showbread, you pick up the cup of frankincense, and you move then onto the golden altar. That's what my personal belief is. Just after doing this research, I'm like, it makes so much sense that, the altar of incense is part of the word frankincense. And since it's already there in the room, it stands to reason that a person would then bring it to the altar of incense and offer it there. At least the priest would in those days. Just my little commentary. All right, so the censer is described as of gold in the same way that all the furniture of the heavenly realms is described in the Apocalypse. So the gold represents the glory of God. When the Bible talks about gold, especially in reference to heaven or God, it's usually talking about the glory of God. And it says, and there was given unto him much incense. Apparently following the analogy of the temple service, The first angel brings in his golden censer fire from the brazen altar of sacrifice, and now there is given unto him by another angel incense to burn at the golden altar. So do you see what happened here? One angel goes to the brazen altar, the altar of burnt offering. He gets a coal. He brings it over to the golden altar. And then another angel brings the incense. So we have the fire and the incense to burn. And for incense, he says, go look at Revelations 5:8. Anyway, it says that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints. Add it unto the prayers of all the saints, says in the Revised Version. The prayers are to be incensed so as to typically render them pure and acceptable to God. That is just amazing. So the prayers are rendered pure. They're to be incensed, to be rendered them pure and acceptable to God. Amazing. And he shall take a censer full of burning coals of fire from off the altar before the Lord. This is verse 12. And his hands full of sweet incense beaten small, and bring it within the veil. And he shall put the incense upon the fire before the Lord. So he takes the censer full of burning coals of fire from off the altar before the Lord, and his hands full of sweet incense beaten small, and bring it within the veil. Okay, I missed that earlier. And he shall put the incense upon the fire before the Lord, and the cloud of the incense may cover the mercy seat that is upon the testimony. Wow. That's a lot to take in there. This was Leviticus 16, 12, and 13. Now, we've run out of time, but next time I've got some really fascinating, that'll be more geared to apply to your relationship to God. And I really do appreciate you stopping by and listening to this teaching. Please, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the like button, leave a comment or a question. I do my best to find out the answers if I don't know them. Or you can just say, hey, what? I'd love to interact with you. Thanks again for tuning in. Please join us again next time as we go deeper into the Altar of Incense. God bless.